Being shortly after 6:30, we'll call the meeting to order and begin with a prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Leary.
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yeah.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
That's 9 present.
Counsel Leahy.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence for Elizabeth Leahy Nangle, mother of State Representative David Nangle. She was married to William Nangle, and they were married for over 69 years. Together, they had 6 children, and they made Lowell their home. They had a very strong presence over at St. Margaret's Parish also. So, thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. We have a public hearing scheduled for this evening, but being before 7 o'clock, we'll skip ahead to communications from the city manager. We have items A through C. The first item is speed limits. Any discussion on speed limits? Counsel Leahy.
Thank you. I didn't know if we wanted to send this to Transportation Subcommittee just for discussion. It was a good report. It gave us a map and outline of streets that are basically under city obligation for speeds and then the state roads. So I think it's worth a discussion if we'd like to have it. I don't know how my colleagues feel about it. We had meeting tonight and had a good discussion on transportation. Part of it was making the streets and sidewalks safer. So I think in light of what other communities are doing around the Commonwealth, it'd be a good discussion to have. Thank you.
Do you want to make that as a motion, Counsel?
So moved.
Sure.
All right, so Counsel Leahy has a motion to refer this matter to item A to the Transportation Subcommittee, seconded by
Second.
Counsel Elliott. Discussion on the motion. Counsel Samaras.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to agree with Council Leahy. We've talked about the speed limit, especially like streets like Andover Street. And the report was quite thorough, but it states that Andover Street is basically a highway that's in a residential area in this city. And we've talked for many times about changing the speed limit. I can recall the other day actually doing the speed limit, which I think is excessive. And I was passed by a New Hampshire car, doing at least 50 to pass me on Andover Street. And so there's 2 issues here. One, I think we need that type of discussion. And 2, to ask the city manager if he could request that the chief of police monitor the Andover Street within the next few weeks, because I think people are using that as a throughway to go from, we'll say, New Hampshire to Massachusetts or vice versa. But I think we have to have a police presence. Thank you.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I concur. I think it makes sense to send it to the subcommittee. And for as long as I've been sitting here, speed in the city has always been an issue. And I think now that there is an opportunity through the Municipal Modernization Act that we can do something about it. I mean, we've talked about speed bumps, we've, signs and patrols and, those signs that monitor the speed. I think it makes all the sense in the world, especially, as Council Samaras mentioned, how many cars are cutting through the city. And I think they are affecting, neighborhoods, and people are concerned about it. So I think it makes sense for us to take a look at it. We don't want to bring gridlock to the city, but by the same token, it makes some sense to slow cars down with, with what we're trying to do in the city. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Planning and Development for the very in-depth motion response here, and I just would like to make a pledge for Habitat for Humanity, who's trying to acquire this property off the city, because they've done some tremendous things in this neighborhood. On Rock Street, on Willie Street, and now potentially around the corner on Franklin Street, where they have purchased city-owned, dilapidated, not very well-maintained properties, put them on the tax rolls, putting in, what Habitat Humanity is all about is achieving low-income home ownership, and it does not get any better than that, okay, where these are owner-occupied, homeowner units, and it's a great thing for that neighborhood. It's really transformed that end of Rock Street and Willie Street, so I just want to pledge support for Habitat Humanity and ask that Planning and Development still work in conjunction to the best of our ability with that organization. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the report. It's good that we all get this information on the development over there. And as Councilor Belanger said, this group, I mean, when you go to the dedications, when the family moves in, I mean, they're so appreciative to have a place to call their home. So anything we can do to support them is appreciated. It's good information to get out on this, and I hope that, I guess right now they're working with DPD on whether to do the park of the home or the home of the park first, but it's my understanding they have money for the park first, so we just want to make sure that they didn't lose out on their grant. So anything we can do to support them is great. And as we said, they're really lifting these neighborhoods up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you, Mr. Manager, for meeting with this company relative to what has been taking place at Westminster Village. I appreciate the fact that they're willing to sit down, because that hasn't been the case. And since we brought this forward and you have met with them, I mean, I have personally received a couple of letters and additional emails from residents who have tried to complain in the past about what has been taking place, rampant drug use and fights and so many other issues. And quite frankly, they've been told by the management company to be quiet, don't say anything, don't rock the boat, and that they have lived in fear. And I would like to request, Mr. Manager, that we get a monthly report on the status, particularly when it comes to the second item that you reference in your memo, that they're willing to discuss supplementing their existing patrol. What do they currently have up there for security that, in my opinion, clearly has had little to no effect, and they cannot have, they can't keep people up there, and people leave because there's so many problems. So, I mean, it's a good offer, but I think it needs to be increased significantly.
No, first of all, through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, we've already met with them. We did sit down,
Right.
as it says. I was surprised at the meeting for them to feign ignorance of all of these incidents that are going on. I don't, it lends me to believe that they are like absentee landlords. So we made it clear to them in no uncertain terms that we're taking this seriously, and if we have to take more rash steps, we're going to. And one of those more rash steps is on the agenda for this evening, and that's the public nuisance properties. This is the first draft of it. It won't be getting a final hearing till the first of the year. We'll be giving you an updated version of that based upon some of the thoughts we heard at the meeting. But they did promise to do some additional police details, so if I could have the superintendent describe what they plan to do.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor, to the City Council. Excuse me, yes, they have indicated they're going to institute police details there 4 nights a week for 4 hours per evening, and that will be combined and intermingled with their own private security, which they have, I think they indicated they have that Thursday through Sunday. So they will be doing that. We anticipate that'll start this weekend, and it'll be on some kind of a random basis. It'll be heavily geared towards the weekend, but then also intermittently during the week.
That's good news. I mean, I think that's a lot. I think that's a strong statement, because no one should have to live in fear of retribution, whether it's from the management company or from, I think a small number of, of thugs up there that are creating lots of havoc. And I mean, there are a lot of good people up there. It's a good project, but that's good news, Chief. I think that's going to go a long way, because it was and there's a long way to go to some degree. So, thank you. I think that that addresses my concern. If it'd be nice to get a report, not so much from you, Chief, because I don't want to burden you with another report, but if they could give us maybe progress reports that you could pass through, if that makes sense, just to keep us updated and let them know that we're going to hold their feet to the fire to improve living conditions up there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I do appreciate the report, along with the efforts, Mr. Manager, from you and Superintendent Taylor regarding this, because we cannot continue to sustain these amount of calls going to this property, okay? We have a number of 667 in a 12-month period. That is unacceptable for police and fire. That is a lot of resources going to this property, okay? So I appreciate Councilor Elliott's motion on this matter, and Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, Mr. Manager, by law, can we implement a fee per call? Does it get to that point where we can start charging them for a police and fire call? With all due respect to the profound number here.
Yes, what you'll see is in the updated version of the public nuisance property ordinance, not only are we going to have a fine, but we're also going to have, if they continue after getting the fine, if they continue to become a problem property, we're going to institute covering the cost of our calls to the facility. The City of Boston has already passed an ordinance similar to that, and we're using their ordinance as an example that we will be able to, I think the chief, a police call is probably around $700, correct, when you?
Oh, I'm going to say it's more than that.
Yeah, so, it's one thing to charge $300 fine, which we have in it, but if they continue to be a problem property, we're going to impose the cost of the call. You can imagine what it's like for a fire truck with all that $6 a gallon for diesel fuel. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it on their tax bill, so they can't avoid paying it, as it'll have to be part of the taxes. So we're getting very serious with them, and we'll make sure that we monitor it greatly.
Very good, Mr. Manager. Thank you very much. Thank you for addressing it so promptly. It's a very serious issue, and I do appreciate it, and we'll elaborate a little bit more when we get to later on in the agenda of the evening with the nuisance property proposed ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. If you, in my opinion, if you want to hold their attention, related management company, I would send this report to the Boston office of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They're a project-based Section 8 development, and if HUD knew that this was going on there, they would certainly stand up and take notice. So I would suggest that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager. And I say ditto with my colleague, Councilor Milanazzo. with the property at the corner of Nesmith and East Merrimack Street. If it's run by the state, the agency that supervises that, send them the same thing. Thank you, that's a good idea.
I think that's an excellent idea, too. Do we need a motion on that, or is that something that we'll just do, Mr. Manager, or, go ahead.
Move to approve.
Okay,
Will you make the motion?
okay, go ahead.
And rest assured, we're already working on the Nesmith Street property. That's on our radar screen. The chief is working with them, and if they don't clean up their act, we're going to move against them also.
I'd be happy to send you the contact information, and if you don't have it, to the Boston office. Be happy to do that.
I'd like to make that motion. I think it'd be important to have it part of the record.
Okay.
Or-
So
or- or-
motion by,
Councilman Linaldo should make the motion.
motion by Councilman Malinowski, second by Council Elliott. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? All opposed? So voted. That concludes the communications from the manager. Chair would entertain a motion to accept the communications, place them on file by Council Leahy, second by Council Palanger. Discussion. All in favor? All opposed? So voted. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of Cliff Krieger to the Hunger Homeless Commission.
Move approval.
We have a motion to accept the communication, place it on file by Council Mercia, seconded by Council Leary. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, on to votes from the city manager, we have, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Cliff.
Cliff is
I'm sorry,
here.
I didn't see you. Do you want to come in to the microphone? I apologize.
I was just happy with the speed at which it passed. And I've been called Chris a lot. Cliff Krieger, 77 Mansard Street.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Council Leahy.
I just want to say congratulations, and if there's any more work we can give Mr. Krieger, we'll look for something. He's very busy in the community, and we appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Next is vote authorizing the city manager to execute a lease with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Lowell. And if there's, do we have can we have a roll call? Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Council Elliott, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Councilor Elliott.
I wanted to speak on it, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I mean, I appreciate having satellite offices. I know it houses some of our, police personnel because of the facility that we have isn't big enough or it doesn't accommodate all our police officers at any given point in time. But at some point, are these, are these satellite offices as effective as they once used to be? I mean, we have them scattered throughout the city. We pay a lot of money. This is a lot of money for this lease. And I mean, some are vacant. I don't know if we still pay them. There's one across from the Stocklosa School. And the premise in the past was we would have these neighborhood police stations, and they would be, the manpower would come from volunteers, and that's not the case anymore. So, moving forward, it's a lot of money to spend, and it's not in the greatest condition, and I don't know if it really is suitable to conduct the police work. But at some point, there's got to be a cost benefit for all of these stations, and is that money, can it be better used somewhere else? I'm not trying to hurt the Boys and Girls Club. I know this is important in an area that, I don't know if there's better areas, but
Mr. Manager.
it's a lot of money, I guess, is my
The
point.
question is that, do you consider that the satellite police stations to be an efficient use of our resources for community policing?
Yes, through you to the City Council. Absolutely, it's a critical component of our community policing strategy in the city. We used to have many more. We used to call them sub-precincts at the time. I think at one time we had 6 of them scattered across the city, essentially small storefronts. Currently, we really only have 2. The one that you mentioned on Broadway Street was donated to us. Since then, we've abandoned it.
Right.
I think the landlord hasn't determined another use for it, so the signage is still there, but we don't use that one. So we have 2. We have one in one half the city in at the Boys and Girls Club. The other one is in Centerville, obviously, for the other half of the city. It's key. It provides not only critically needed space that we just don't have in the current facility over there for the personnel that work there, but it also provides a location where the officers in the city can meet with the residents. We've decentralized that problem solving and preventative strategy from the community policing, which has been, I think, remarkably successful in reducing crime and the fear of crime in the city, into those two substations. And the key component that we would lose if we were to ever bring them back into the station is that community involvement. They're in the neighborhoods. The people that work and live in those neighborhoods have easier access to come into those locations, meet with the command staff that is assigned there, the officers, and also the civilian crime analysts, and strategize and try and solve problems. And fundamentally, Counselor, we don't have any room for them back in the station anyway, so.
Yeah, no, I think that sort of hits home the point.
Yeah.
We're spending, this is a 3-year lease, we're spending in excess of $20,000 a year, and they're really not ideal conditions, but we're sometimes I think we're putting good money, or it's just a Band-Aid and we're putting good money after bad, not ideal situations. So I just think, big picture, we have to look at what we're spending on. I'm going to support it, Chief, but I don't think it's the best strategy for us moving forward, knowing that we have a dilapidated building over here, and money could be perhaps used elsewhere or for a better purpose. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the chance to ask questions.
Council Belanger, on the motion to approve, to allow the city manager to enter into a lease with the Boys and Girls Club. Go ahead.
You asked for a second, Mr. Mayor?
No, I'm not. The motion's already before
Okay,
us.
yeah, no, I'd like to comment, thank you. Mr. Mayor, through you to the superintendent now. Chief, for clarification, is the existing police station staying there and some going over to the Boys and Girls Club building itself? Just what exactly is going on here?
No, Counselor, it's that little building, that outbuilding that's off towards Clemente Park. It's just a continuation of an already standing lease that we've had for several years. This is just to essentially renew it, same terms, same monetary payment to the Boys and Girls Club. We will just continue it for 3 more years.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, just a couple of the uses of that facility, and thankful to the chief. Juvenile probation goes there certain nights a week. Adult probation goes there certain nights of the week. We do a learning through literature program that's done there as well. So on top of the police substation being there, or the satellite, it's it's manned there at night as well, where people get to come in, check in, and I think it's a valuable piece that the city participates in. And I'm going to support it. So thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Council Leahy.
Thank you. Just quickly, all I wanted to add to is I understand the utilization of the space and that you need it. But what I would like to see also is, maybe we get some volunteers to help clean it up, and if you needed rugs and painting. But and I had asked you this before, so you do have certain departments over there, so.
Yes.
We're making use of the space, and.
Yes.
So is that what Councilor Rourke was saying, there's a juvenile?
Well, Councilor Rourke, thank you for mentioning that. The probation department does come in and utilize the space at night, and that's another example of our community partnership
Yeah.
with our law enforcement partners in the community. So they actually use it and meet clients off-site.
Okay, great.
So the other thing I'll just mention is maybe a year and a half ago, we put money, city's money and some money from the Police Department Trust Fund into a pretty substantial renovation project there. So we recently did clean it up, new rugs, renovated it. We probably put, if my memory's correct, maybe $30,000 or $40,000 into it.
Okay.
To, put some new technology in it and stuff too.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think over the years, this substation has gone a long way to really develop trust and communication with the Southeast Asian community in that neighborhood. So I think again, working with the Southeast Asian community over the years, especially the elders, to build trust with the police department, with law enforcement is just so important. And I think that this substation over the years has done that. So I want to see that continue, so I'll support the extension of the lease. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Next is a supplemental appropriation to raise from local receipts and appropriate to the Department of Planning and Development salary and wages permanent account, the amount of $65,000. Do we have motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Rourke, seconded by Counsel Samaras. Discussion on the motion. Counsel Elliott.
Can we just, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, this is above and beyond the budget's been adopted for this fiscal year, and it's on top of the levy. There's no money from within that can be managed, you have to raise.
This will be to supplement the Department of Planning and Development's energy aggregation program, but it will be in addition to what was appropriated in the budget. However, those receipts that will support the program are not coming from the tax levy. They'll be coming from local receipts that were in excess of what was anticipated.
And are those receipts going back into the general fund, or are you setting up?
That's
a
correct. So
separate fund?
they'll be going into the general fund, and they'll be paid to support the activities of the energy aggregation program, which has been saving the residents of Lowell money on their energy bills.
Yeah, no, it's a
And
huge savings, don't get
commercial,
me wrong, I just wanted to know
Yep.
why and, the purpose. I mean, millions have been saved, and this will continue to expand that.
That's right.
those
It will
savings.
go towards expanding the program and exploring all opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next is a vote authorizing the city manager to approve an easement with the PMC Property Group Incorporated for traffic signal easement at the junction of Broadway and Dutton Street. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Rourke, seconded by Counsellor Milonazo. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo. Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have orders from the city manager, an order for a 60-day trial for various locations. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Rourke, seconded by Counsel Milonazo. Discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Counsel Mercia.
before we go to the next issue, could I, at this time, suspend the rules since we're into ordinances about traffic? We won't be meeting next week. I would have had a motion on for next week, but we're not meeting until, do I say, next year? So I won't be here till 2017. And this would be an issue that someone called me, and they asked, could I help them with this issue about allowing some clergy-only parking in front of the St. John's Episcopal Church on Gorham Street. So that's the issue. Could I suspend
Okay,
the rules?
Counsel Mercia is asking for suspension of the rules in order to take up a
So
matter
moved.
regarding parking on Gorham Street. If there's no objection, we'll suspend the rules by general consent. Hearing no objection, Counsel Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion would request the city manager to have the traffic engineer put up, well, they asked for 4 signs, but whatever, if it would be possible, in front of St. John's Episcopal Church, 260 Gorham Street, across from the Bishop Markham, saying clergy parking only from 9 a.m. till noontime. There's elderly people that go to the church between that time, and they have to walk very far. So they're just asking if that could be, it wouldn't tie up the neighborhood all day, and I don't even know if we park on Gorham Street. It's a big public way, but if, I'm just asking that this motion be referred to the traffic engineer just to look at it, because
Okay.
I know they wanted it right away, but we have to follow procedure, and this is the procedure.
Okay, do we have a second to the motion? Second. Second to the motion by Counsel Leary. Motion is to send it to the traffic engineer for a report and recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted.
Thank you so much.
If there's no objection, the chair would ask for suspension of the rules in order to take up 2 petitions that need to be referred to the city manager, to the law department for a report and
So moved.
recommendation. So if there's no objection, we'll suspend the rules by general consent and take up the petitions. And one is to request an overhanging sign at 16 Merrimack Street in Lowell, and to request the installation of an overhanging sign for the Galleria de los Andres at 147 East Merrimack Street in Lowell. So the motion would be to refer to the law department for a report and recommendation by the chair, second by Council Rourke. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Being 7 o'clock, we'll move to the public hearing. The public hearing is to adopt the minimum residential factor for fiscal year 2017. We'll open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, we close the hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, we close the hearing on behalf of the opponents, open it up to the City Council. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, roll call.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
We're returning to the agenda to item 4.2 is a confirmatory order of taking for the jam plan. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion approved by Counsel Leahy, seconded by Counsel Leary. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Mr. Mayor?
Counsel Belanger.
I'm sorry, I got a quick question. Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager now. Mr. Manager, I read the resolution now. It doesn't seem like we're taking any additional land. Is this more or less clarification or a title issue, or what's going on here?
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, this is the final step in certifying to the state that there are no title issues, there are no interest in the Hamilton Canal District other than the city of Lowell. And the best way to do that is by a confirmatory taking, because it doesn't cost us anything, and we're not taking any additional land other than that we already own there.
Okay, so you're sharing clear title.
That's it.
in the end. Okay,
Very good.
great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
The next order of business is an ordinance to amend Chapter 222, the Peace and Good Order, by creating a new section entitled 222.17, entitled the Public Nuisance Properties. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to and refer to a public hearing for January 3rd, 2017 at 7 o'clock. Do we have a motion to approve the public hearing by Counsel Leary, seconded by Counsel Elliott? Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, under subcommittee reports, we have a subcommittee report from the Finance Subcommittee for a meeting held on December 12th. Counsel Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Finance Subcommittee met last evening at 5:30 to discuss the proposed fee increases presented by the administration. In attendance were members of the subcommittee, myself, Counsel Leary and Counsel Milonazo. Also in attendance was Counsel Leahy, the maker of the motion, as well as Counsel Samaras. So again, the purpose was to have the manager provide an explanation of the proposal and as a result, motion was made to recommend to the full council that the proposed increases be forwarded for recommendation to a public hearing. So the manager did discuss a number of reasons why the permit fees are being recommended for increases. First of all, they have not been adjusted or evaluated since 2008. And the purpose is, and we want to make it clear right off the bat, the manager as well as the members of the council and subcommittee asked, it's not a revenue-driven proposal or purpose. Meaning, we're not just raising fees, and we want the homeowners and businesses to know we're not just raising, fees because it's going to generate revenue. Yes, it will, but it's the cost of services that has not been adjusted since 2008. So it's really a reflection of the cost of inspections or the cost of doing business or the administrative costs that the city is absorbing. The taxpayers are having to pay rather than the business or the developer or the user. So these user fees need to be commensurate with the cost that the city is absorbing. So on some of them, the second purpose is there are some services that the city provide that we're increasing fees to act as a deterrent. And one of those, or two of them, for instance, are the fine for illegal dumping. Right now, it's $100, Mr. Manager, is that correct? And the proposed increase will be a pyramid. The more, the first time you're going to get fined, and I think this is important. I think this is one that is significant. It's going to go up to $500. We get you dumping, it's going up to $500. We get you dumping again, it's going to be $1,500, and the third time is $2,500, and it'll increase. So this is an example of trying to increase the fees so it'll be a deterrent. We don't want you to be dumping anyway, but if you do, there's going to be a stiff penalty moving forward. Second, another example are the vacant buildings that we have in the city. We learned last night there are over 400 vacant properties owned by, in large part, banks that are outside of, or they're national banks. They're certainly not local. And the registration fee is $100, which they pay the fee and it continues to sit idle in the city. Sometimes they may not even know about it. So moving forward, this fee will be increased from $100 to $1,000, with the hope and expectations that banks aren't just going to sit on them. These properties, they're going to be aware that it's going to be somewhat of a stiff penalty, and they're more likely. And again, this fee will increase with every year that it sits on, it just sits vacant. So the first year it'll be $1,000, second year $2,000, Mr. Manager, and then and then $3,000, or it continues to escalate at a significant rate. So the incentive is to get the banks to notice and do something about it, because we don't, they're a nuisance in the neighborhood. And I guess I was, myself and members of the subcommittee were kind of taken aback that there are this many properties, knowing that it's very desirable, and the real estate market is pretty hot and pretty active in the city to have that many pieces of property. So we hope this is going to move it. So the other two items of significance referenced by the city manager when it comes to the inspectional services department is the notion that right now the inspections, the cost for inspections doesn't always pick up the fee. The fees don't pick up the cost that we have to absorb when it comes to building inspection. I think the example was the Markley building, Mr. Manager. I think that was a good example of why these need to be adjusted. These larger projects, right now, fees are based on the number of fixtures, whether it's lights or plumbing, and we don't capture the staff time that we need to, that we pay from these projects. So this is going to address it, and it's a little bit complicated, but we did discuss it last night. But this is moving towards a more appropriate level of fees and costs instead of the fixture-driven example. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and we're going to now be assessing fees on what the actual cost of the construction is and not on a fixture base. I think the last item was the city clerk's office. Fees are going to be increased. They haven't been increased for almost close to a decade, and we have had to hire additional staff in order to keep up with the licenses, the birth certificates, the registration fees for dogs and others. And these increases will pay for the staff person that has just been hired. So, those are examples. There are some other increases. I don't know, Mr. Manager, if you want to, go through them. You went through department by department, and you asked the department heads to come up with these fees that have not been, evaluated since 2008, and where's the costing the taxpayers more than we're taking in. So I think that's the premise that we need to let the people at home know, that we're not just raising fees to raise fees. The taxpayers are taking it, are paying for it now, and it should be the user rather than homeowners or taxpayers. So that really is the report. The manager I'd ask the manager to just go through a little bit more, but that's generally what we're looking at. I think it makes some sense, and that's why I supported to bring it forward to the manager.
Council Leary.
Just first, I think the Councilor Elliott did a good job of summarizing the meeting. I think a lot of the different motions really come out, the fee increases come out regarding behavior mod, especially with the banks. I think really what the goal is, and I think it was presented by the administration, is that ultimately that you'll see a spike in fee increases, but ultimately they'll take action because they're not going to want to be paying that amount of money because it becomes real money. I might take to some of these banks, $1,000 might not be as sufficient as we need, but I think it's a good start. You're going from $100 a year to $1,000, and then you're accelerating that cost moving forward. So it definitely is a real amount of money. So I think that's very positive. I think this is going to a public hearing, I think, right? Correct, before any voting. So I think for the residents, what you do want to look at is a lot of the different fee increases, say for a dog license. I think it was, explained to us, not only these fees haven't been raised in almost a decade, as Councilor Elliott articulated, but also they're really behavior mod in terms of if you have a neutered or spayed dog, it's going to be more money. If you do have it, it's going to be less money. If you don't, it's going to be more money. So it's different things that we want to make sure we get on the website, that we do have people take a look at it when they do come down for the public hearing, why these increases are, because there's a thought process behind it. It's in addition to additional funds coming in. So it is, I think the city clerk's part was interesting to know. It's about $390,000 to run the city clerk's office. The funds themselves will probably generate about $400,000. So it does, in a way, become a self-sufficient department. So that's interesting to know whether or not with the banking fees that'll bear fruit going forward. It does take it and removes essentially that department potentially off the tax levy, which is a good, appropriate way of managing services. But I do encourage people to take a look at the particular fees, because there might be one that you have an interest in that maybe we won't want to increase. But I think overall the presentation was pretty good. I think the way of looking at behavior, especially the dumping and the banks, is appropriate. And I appreciate the creativity looking out to what other municipalities in the state and otherwise do, and we're replicating what's successful. So I think it's a good start. I think it'll be a good public hearing, and I encourage people to take a closer look at the actual line items. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a concern here. First off, I try to make every subcommittee meeting that I possibly can, because I think every subcommittee is important. This particular one was important too, but I wasn't able to be at this one yesterday. I'm specifically concerned about the fee increase, and I'm thrilled about that. And the reason I say this is we have a problem with our abandoned property, our neglected property from banks that own it are getting insurance, but they don't really care as long as that money is coming in and they're out-of-state banks. So that is an issue that I'm concerned of, to have it, the fee raised from 100 to 1,000. Be that as it may, I'm even more concerned because the sophomore class at Lowell High School, this is one of their pet peeve issues that they were working on in civics class. So this is what they were addressing. So it would have been nice for me to have known this. Be that as it may, because I wasn't able to get to the subcommittee meeting, I didn't get this paper. So I think that in the future, if I have a Parks and subcommittee and I get material, what I get, I want every single one of my colleagues to get the same thing. And I'd like the same thing to take place if there's and I'm not blaming Councilor Elliott or whatever, but when there's a subcommittee meeting of any sort and 5 people show up there and they get information, it should be on our desk for the people that didn't come. I would have liked to have this for myself, so I'm asking right now if I could have a copy of this before the public hearing, so that not only for myself, that I can let the class know at Lowell High School that your message was indirectly addressed because their concern was that the fee should be raised. And in fact, it is going to be raised, but I didn't know that. But if you can get my point, I think what the subcommittee has for information, so should we all have. And I don't have that information, and I would have liked it, and I want it. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that you could suggest to the class that they watch the televised version of the subcommittee meeting if they weren't able to be, as a homework assignment or something like that. But thank you. Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And quick to Councilor Mercer's point, if we could actually, anytime we have a subcommittee, or even on a meeting night where we have an outside company coming in for a presentation, if we get that in our packet on Friday, maybe we'd be even more prepared for any upcoming meeting. With that being said, I had 2 motions I think were addressed in the packet. One was the dumping, and I know that when I presented the motion, a few months ago, a couple of cities such as Somerville and Lawrence actually went through the process of making dumping a crime. And I believe that the first fine that was set was $3,000. So just curious of how we came to the aggregate fine amounts. Starting from 100 and get to 2,500. It's a lot better than it was before, and I would support what we have there now. But just I know some cities have made it an actual criminal offense for dumping. And then secondly, with regards, I know Councilor Elliott spoke about this, neglected and abandoned properties. I was under the impression that Developmental Services was going to present to the council a presentation concerning how they track these properties, how they are updating these properties, where they are, so much so that not only the council but neighborhood groups and so forth could actually look and see what's going on with these certain properties. I think the council asked for that multiple months ago, so maybe at the date of the public hearing, Developmental Services could come and give us a presentation of what they're doing and how they're doing it. I understand that there's already something in place, so as soon as that can get done, I think it'd be a very informational program for everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Elliott, but just for, as a technicality, I guess, but it's my understanding that the subcommittee recommended that the matter be referred to the law department in order that they can write up an amendment to the ordinance or an ordinance.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest to Council Mercer. We had this because moving forward, there's not meetings in it for a couple of weeks, and this was referred, I think 3 weeks ago to us. And just for the students at Lowell High, Council Mercer, we got this last night, and it was good. But these are just 5 examples of some of the more significant increases that will have a good effect. There's 13 pages of of fee increases. Some have been addressed and some have not. And we did ask the manager before the public hearing to send those out again so we can all take a look at. And I think that's what Council Leary was suggesting to people at home. You may want to go through them because they haven't been adjusted, and it's important to take a look at all of them. So we did get this last night, but it's just really a snapshot of all the other ones that are going to take place. And you know what? The students still have a chance to come to the public hearing, which it's probably the best time for them to come to weigh into it. So
You want to make a motion to refer this to the law department then, so that they can write up the ordinance for the public hearing?
yeah, we made a recommendation to the council. I think that makes sense to make a motion that all of the fee increases, all 13 pages, be referred to the law department for preparation and sent to a public hearing.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Council Leary. Any further discussion on the motion? Council Leary.
Just quick, I mean, I think, not to belabor the point, but we do need to release the proposed increases. We should get that on the website, and we should publish it. It's something that it's a lot of information. Some of it's going to be pertinent to other folks and not. So it's something we want to make sure we get out there. And it isn't going to be, the public hearing will be, I guess, if with the law department, probably not till mid-January. So there is sufficient amount of time for folks to take a look at it. I do agree, one other comment, I do agree, if we can, I know it's difficult to be, perfect, but all the subcommittee information we should try to get on that Friday. I know it's a challenge sometimes to make that happen, but the more information out to every counselor. I mean, the subcommittees are just small groups with 9 folks. So anything we can do to make that more efficient, more effective for everybody, I think that'd be good. And again, at the end of the day, you're not going to be 100% in that. It's not like that's that bad a deal. Just if we can try to do that in all subcommittees, I think that'd be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
I don't want to belabor this, but I do think it's important. I'd like the manager to speak one last component that I did not speak of, where, taxpayers or the city is absorbing costs when it comes to these development projects, where we give tax breaks and we're spending a lot of time, planning development and other staff, spending a lot of time working with the developers. So with that, Mr. Manager, and the example you gave was the TIF calculation.
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of the fee reflecting the time spent by the City of Lowell employees. Is when we give a tax increment financing agreement with like Kronos or with Markley or with the others, is what we did is we took the estimated time that each individual in planning and development and the assessor's office spends to develop a TIF, and then we took that estimate, and that was the fee for a TIF in the future. So that's a perfect example, Councilor, of these fees reflecting the actual time spent on preparing the TIF for these companies.
And right now, it's minimal, it's nominal. Is it $100 and it's going to $3,000 because that's the staff time we're spending. So these are the big ones that need to be, that we need to look at. Thank you again. That's my last one, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Leahy.
Just quickly, so I can belabor this, I just did want to say, through you to the manager, that I thought this was a good report and a good subcommittee last night, because again, we're not trying to raise fees, but we need to be competitive and we need to cover our costs. So I thought that you and your office did a great job on this, because the last example that we just talked about, we can't be paying for everything, and we can't just balance that across the budget every year. So it's most of them are going to go up as a user fee. If you use the service, you pay for it, which is just logical. And it was time that we brought the fees up to date. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion to refer to the law department to be drawn up for an amendment to the ordinance? All in favor? All opposed? So voted. The chair would also entertain a motion to accept the report from the Finance Committee as a report of progress by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Discussion. All in favor? All opposed? So voted. The next item is a subcommittee report from the Transportation Subcommittee for a meeting held on December 13th. Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we held the Transportation Subcommittee to discuss 2 motions. The first was a multimodal transportation from the Gallagher Terminal to downtown by Councilor Belanger, and second was a joint motion from Councilor Leahy and Councilor Leary about traffic and pedestrian patterns on Chelmsford Street. In attendance, along with myself, as my members of the subcommittee, Council Belanger and Council Leahy, also Council Mercia, Council Leary, Council Samaras, and Council Milanazzo. City Manager Murphy is also there with DPD Director Diane Trad, Kevin Coughlin as well, Traffic Engineer Nick Bostonetto, Parking Director Nick Navin. From the LRTA, we had Jim Scanlon, and from the UMass Lowell, we had Tom Liliano and Rich Lemoyne. With dealing with the first motion, the multimodal transportation, it was really broken down to 3 categories. One was zip car, the second was buses, and the third had to deal with bikes. We spoke of the connection between University Crossing, the downtown Hamilton Canal area, and the Gallagher Terminal. With regards to car sharing and zip car services, the LRTA already has an agreement in place with Zipcar. UMass Lowell has instituted a Zipcar program since 2010. They currently use 14 Zipcars with a user rate of 40% for their students and faculty, which is well above the national average of 30%. With regards to Zipcars, the hope is for the city to join UMass Lowell and the LRTA to actually share services that would cut down the costs of obtaining the Zipcars and their storage on their own. And currently, I know the city manager just told the subcommittee that they're currently talking with our partners and to a Zipcar about actually expanding in the city. Second, to deal with buses. And right now, there are 18,000 total students at UMass Lowell, with 5,000 of them actually live in the city, along with 2,000 employees at the university. They're going to start a pilot program in January that's going to run to July of 2017, that anybody with a valid UMass Lowell ID will be able to ride LRTA buses free of charge. And that includes the full schedule of weekends, weekdays, and nights. And then lastly, concerning the multimodal form of transportation were bikes. UMass Lowell currently has 40 bikes available on campus. And again, once again, the goal there is for the city at some point to partner up with UMass Lowell with the utilization of bikes. Second motion of the evening, once again by Councilor Leahy and by Councilor Leary, was the traffic and pedestrian patterns on Chelmsford Street. And once again, traffic engineer Nick Bosnell spoke about that. And he spoke of, first of all, about complete streets, and that Lowell is actually a national leader and ahead of the curve in regards to complete streets. What was highlighted at the Gallagher Terminal was the $400,000 grant to design a pathway from the Gallagher Terminal through the South Common. We spoke of the number of jobs that were in Lowell. There's 35,000 jobs currently, with 25,000 workers commute into the city of Lowell. And then also we have 40,000 citizens of Lowell that commute out of the city. So with that balance of 10,000 citizens of the city, 4% use transit, such as trains and buses. With regards to Chelmsford Street, the traffic and the pedestrian patterns had multiple problems, but Nick actually offered some solutions, which included the elimination of pull-out parking, additional lighting, rebuild some crosswalks and enforce sign ordinances. And also, what he said was a very cost-effective solution would be just the restripping of lanes, especially in regards to the Chelmsford Street to Wellman Ave to Plain Street area. This was a subcommittee that dealt with the partnerships with the city of Lowell. That included UMass Lowell, Middlesex Community College, and the LRTA. It was much information was discussed, and it looks promising for the future, not only of walkability of the city, multi-module transportation, but also the influx of more students and more workers in the city. I think is a good way to, that we could alleviate some traffic and parking problems in the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Leary.
Just quickly, I know a lot of it was said in the subcommittee, but first, thank you to the administration for taking the time and putting the effort into it. I know the Chelmsford Street corridor it's almost 2 miles long. It's going to have significant numbers increase with employment and residential. You know, just with the Kronos coming in, that's going to be an added addition of cars. Maycom putting their their improvements off of Hale Street is going to be significant. And as we get into the Lord Overpass and hopefully the development of the Hamilton Innovation District, that's going to be significant because it's not only going to be the connector, people coming off on Thorndike, but there's going to be increased traffic coming down 110. So I think planning for it now, I appreciate Nick's involvement and him, really taking the time and designing it. I think we got to really start thinking about implementing some of this stuff really next year. A lot of it Nick was describing in terms of just paint, realigning some of the lanes, but I also think we need to look at sidewalks, which I think is going to be a challenge because it's going to be a cost, but that will only improve that district as you have more cars that ultimately be coming down 110 and coming into the city. So I'm very thankful for the very detailed report, and I look forward to seeing some implementation and more discussion before the council as well as the transportation subcommittee. The other side of it is equally as interesting. I really appreciate, this since I've been on the council, is the first time you had LRTA and UMass Lowell together in a room discussing synergies. Bad word, but ultimately, really, how do they combine and use each other effectively? And I know Councilor Belanger has been discussing, how do you get transportation into the Innovation District. Councilor Milanazzo and I put a motion regarding really just that, cooperating between the LRITA and UMass Lowell, and ultimately leading up to another part of our motion, how do you get transportation directly linked instead of, we're not going to be able to get the trolley system effectively there. How do you do that with using LRTA? So I think that's another step jump out as we move into it. So I'm very excited. I'm very thankful for the initial steps going forward here. Very good to see partners working together. The zip car stuff is just, in a word, is cool. I think that's going to be very positive for the city, and I think taking steps additionally to add to that can only help improve the city's transportation issues. And the bicycles, in terms of using that like UMass Lowell, is also very positive. So it's really good to see. I think the council, every councilor here over the past few years prior to me joining has had a different motion regarding traffic and congestion and what to do about it and how to manage. And I think these are small steps, but they're significant steps that will help improve going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Chair would entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Rook, seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, we'll move on to the motions of the evening, and the first motion of the evening is a motion by Councilor Elliott requesting the city manager provide an update on the Broadway Street Bridge construction. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, it looks like, I don't know what the status of that bridge is, but it seems like it's another NL or boot project, and it is moving at a snail's pace, and it really affects, certainly all the traffic for going over to South Campus, and that has an effect on throughout the rest of the city. So I go by there frequently enough. It looks like they are just doing the minimal, and I don't know if you have any update or how we can get them to move faster to get that bridge built. But is there any expectation of when that bridge is going to be complete?
Mr. Manager.
I'm not usually apologetic for Nell, but in all fairness to them, they've had to have the utilities move first before they could take down the bridge. And they had great difficulty with National Grid moving the utilities, but they've finally moved the utilities. The bridge has been taken down. They're now putting in the abutments. They did encounter some ledge issues when they're doing the abutments, but they're working with that. Their target date right now to have the bridge in place and operational is April of next year. That may be delayed a little bit because of the ledge issues, but right now it's April of next year, and they will give us an updated schedule if it has to be continued, but they are working on it, and it's a spring of 2017 estimated completion date.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And how long was that delay with National Grid? I mean, look, we understand they have priorities, but to me, that is just not acceptable. That is a major, that's a major thoroughfare. It's a major artery for, vehicular traffic in the city. And how long was it?
It was probably about 4 months delay.
Well, I kind of feel bad for the next time they come in for a poll or something like that, but they're always asking us for something, and here's something that delayed traffic for 4 months, and that's really a shame. Okay, thank you for the update. I think that's important, and people will know that there is relief coming, and it would have been, it could have been done almost at the beginning of the year if it wasn't for National Grid. Is that electricity and or gas, or was it just primarily the both? Okay.
Yeah, Yes, and you're right, it would have been probably the beginning of the year if they hadn't delayed, so.
I mean, just for people at home, that's all the buses UMass Lowell that go downtown and they clog Pawtucket Street. There's no other way for them to go. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. You might recall, I think we had the same delays on East Merrimack Street when they were doing that bridge. When Annell was doing that bridge, I think the utilities
And Pawtucket Street.
slowed that up,
Right.
yeah, so. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor Elliott. Request the city manager discuss expanding the residential property exemption for homeowners and provide a report on any impact to the budget. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Elliott.
I know the budget said, I know we just had a discussion, we adopted the minimum residential factor, but this is part of the Municipal Modernization Act. The motion probably should be reversed, that we get a report and then we discuss it later to see what the impact is, because it's more important to find out what the impact is if we do raise the exemption at all. Right now, it's 20%. It primarily affects, those on a fixed income, elderly, our veterans, and I think it's important that we help them if we can, depending upon what the impact is. It can go up. I'm not suggesting we go to the 35%. I know the city of Boston has done that, but we're at our full maximum shift to our businesses as well. So I know it's kind of a catch-22, but I thought it was worthy to look into to see if we can help those people that truly need it at some level. But, the budget's tight to begin with, so we have to pay our expenses somehow. So I'll wait for the report, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion of the evening is by Councilor Elliott. Request the city manager develop an ordinance to zone location for establishments that sell marijuana. Second by Councilor Leary. Councilor Elliott.
I don't really know where this is going, Mr. Manager. I know the state. Excuse me. The regulations take effect Thursday, is it? I thought it was December 15th, and the legislature was going to take some action. I thought I read in the Globe article that there are some do's and some don'ts, and I don't know where this is going, but what I do know, I think it's important that we take a look at. It passed, whether it's a slight margin or not here in the city. I know some communities are putting a referendum on to delay it for a year until there is zoning restrictions, but I think that we need to move forward and have you take a look at it. I don't think we want any businesses downtown with storefronts, in my opinion. I don't support this, but that being said, the majority did vote for it. But we don't want it in particular neighborhoods. And you and I had a discussion about this, Manager, and I appreciate you looking into this when there was the adult entertainment issue, that if you create a zone, then you have some ability to manage it, if you will. So, that's the purpose of it, to look at those areas in the city where, if there's going to be, the ability to sell it, and from a retail perspective, where is the appropriate place for it is. So, that's the essence of the motion.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great motion by Councilor Elliott. Controlling it by zoning is a great tactic, because here's what's very concerning. Number one, any existing medical marijuana facility automatically gets a license to sell retail. Luckily, we only have one in the city. Secondly, municipalities are said to have the 20% of your number of liquor licenses issued in your municipality. In Lowell's case, we have 148 issued liquor licenses. That includes bars, restaurants, clubs, and package stores. However, we can have up to 180 licenses in the city of Lowell. So whatever number you use, the Commonwealth uses, it's unclear, as of a lot of things with this new passing of this law. So that's anywhere from 30 to 35 recreational marijuana dispensaries. That is horrifying, okay? So That, Counselor Elliott brings a good initiative to the table very early with zoning. We can control, we can maybe not allow it in central business districts, not in residential areas. So I think it's the best way for us to have control so we can limit in any way we can the amount of these retail facilities in our city, because I don't think any good's going to come of it, especially during a heroin crisis. It's certainly not going to help anybody. So I'd like to support Councilor Elliott's motion any way we can, limiting the number of retail establishments in the city, and do everything we can to do that. So I support the motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Just as a point of information, Mr. Manager, we have a medical marijuana dispensary, and doesn't the zoning ordinance restrict the districts that something like that can be placed in? So wouldn't we do the same thing with this?
Yes, we did it. There's other towns right now that are looking into it. Just so you know that the recreational use of marijuana goes into effect on December 15th. But as far as the retail sale of marijuana, that doesn't go in until January of 2018. So there is time to look into regulating the spots. And you're right, in the medical marijuana dispensaries, they also had to get a special permit to operate. So that's what we can look into as different zoning, because you don't want them to pop up in certain areas, and we can fashion the zoning so that they're allowed in the least restricted areas as far as we're concerned.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Right, it's the retail aspect that's not allowed until 2018, which will allow us to be able to create some districts or zoning areas. So I think that, but Wednesday, the recreational use is door, it's happening. And is there an expectation after the new year that the legislature will take it up to provide some guidelines to communities?
Mr. Manager.
Yes, if you just look at the referendum, there's no really guidance in it, because the referendum was fashioned by the marijuana industry. But, even the tax on it is what, 3.5%, when other states that have legalized it, they're up around 30%.
Right.
So, the 3% tax isn't going even to pay for our monitoring of these facilities. So, yeah, I think you're going to see that there's going to be some changes, not to I don't think they're going to gut it completely, but at least it'll make it more tolerable for municipalities to be able to host them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed, so voted. The chair skipped over item 7.3, so we'll go back one for that one. 7.3 is also a motion by Councilor Elliott. Request that the city manager and the traffic engineer look into reducing speed limits throughout the city. Second by Councilor Milonazo. Councilor Elliott.
No, I had sent an email saying that Councilor Leahy and Councilor Rourke had already addressed this, but to withdraw it from, I completely forgot that we did discuss it, so this can be withdrawn.
Okay.
It was a great motion, though, Counselor.
Just pass it anyway. Any further discussion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, we'll go on to, next motion of the evening is by Councilor Milonazo. Request city manager report on the status of the implementation of the Municipal Modernization Act of 2016. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is very closely related to Councilor Elliott's motion regarding expanding the residential property exemption for homeowners. As we all know, the new act went into effect, I think it was in early November, and it really impacts quite a bit of how we do business, be it from procurement, be it from even dealing with double poles that a lot of my colleagues bring up on a regular basis, deals with schools, deals with municipal finance and so forth. So I thought it would be a good idea. And I was able to get a copy of a PowerPoint presentation that was done for the Fall River Economic Development Office that I'll be happy to give to the administration, because it actually walks through each component of the act and what if municipalities choose to move forward in that direction. So again, I'm looking for a report as to what the impact will be on the city as we go forward, both on the municipal side and the school side. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion of the evening is by Councilor Belanger. Request the city manager discuss the possibility of a non-binding referendum question regarding the Lowell High School project in the November 2017 City Council election. Seconded by Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Belanger.
No, I know the high school project is still somewhat in its infancy. I know there's a lot of dialogue that's soon to take place. And, you know, we don't have definitive numbers or location, and I'm aware of all of where we are in the process. But what has been concerning is that the small amount of public hearings and input sessions we've had in neighborhood groups and at Lowell High School itself have not been that well attended. It seems to be more elected and city officials than there are stakeholders in the city, and that's very concerning to me. When the largest project in the city's history is about to take place. I know from my standpoint that in a non-binding way, it's going to be difficult for me to make a conscious decision without hearing from the taxpayers who are going to be paying for this project. So what I'm looking to do is potentially in November at the city council election to hear from the electorate how they feel about this and the tax impact it's going to have in their pockets. Okay? I want to be somewhat explanatory how much it's going to cost based on the assessed value per home, potentially in a referendum question in November. Again, it will be non-binding. I'm not trying to pass this decision off to the taxpayer. That's why we're here. It is up to us. But as a gauge, I personally would like to hear from the taxpayers on how they feel about this investment towards the city. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to postpone this and refer it to the city manager for process and timing of what's involved. There's obviously enough time to get it on the ballot, but is there enough time before the city council must take a vote on this? So there's a lot of unanswered questions. I'm throwing it out there for dialogue with my colleagues, how they feel about it. Consciously, this is how I feel. I do want input from the taxpayers, so I'm curious to see how my colleagues feel. But again, it would be a non-binding vote. It is this council's decision. No two ways about it. But that's how I feel. I feel strongly, so I would like to hear input from my colleagues, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
So, Council Belanger, the motion already refers it to the city manager. That's what you're asking for, but what you're also doing is asking that the city manager hold on to it and report back at an appropriate time to the city council rather than...
Yes, with process and timing.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
yes.
Council Samaras, then Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. No, I can understand the motion made by Councilor Belanger and his concerns, but I have concerns also. To wait till November, I believe it would be too late to wait till that time to make any kind of decision. But there are a couple of issues out here. One, I think it's important that our constituents get as much information as possible, and I agree with Councilor Belanger. I've attended most of the presentations that have been made, and I'll say the best I can say is they went through the motions to give the information. That's the engineering company and the two companies, Skanksker, and what's the other company? I'm having a
Perkins
Perkins
Eastman.
Eastman. I'm having a mind block here. But the issue is what they've done. They've made their presentations, but the thing is, when I've attended some of the presentations, they didn't have microphones. People couldn't hear it clearly. There were certainly no handouts to give to people. And in some cases, you couldn't even read what they had placed. So I helped vote for Skanksker and Perkins Eastman, and they are good companies, but one of their expertise is not making a presentation to the public. And I think before anything continues, Mr. Manager, I think we have to devise a plan on how we can reach out to the public and get the people more involved. The issue about non-binding referendum, that's a means that we could use to get to measure what the public is thinking about. But the trouble I have with the referendum, I mean, we were voted in to make tough decisions. And I think to give away the right to make the decision can create a problem. I think right now what we have to do is we do not have the type of information that we could create a referendum anyways. We have to wait till the different companies make a proper assessment as to what our needs are and a recommendation as to what should happen. But secondly, I do agree in the sense that we do not have a true measurement of what the community thinks. And so what I'd like to see from the manager's office, an outline of what we can do to change how we're delivering this information, and to see what we can do to encourage more people to participate in the process. So actually, but in a sense of, I also agree with Council Belanger, on putting it in your lap in a sense to make a decision and to give us the information as to what direction you think we should go. You're getting that information weekly, but I think you can give us a fair assessment as to whether it'll be so complex that perhaps it should go to a referendum vote. But in most cases, I think if the public gets enough information and we receive enough information, we can safely make that decision, because it's very important to the future of the city of Lowell as to what type of high school we do build, and what, basically what kind of, it's the money that we'll expend. It's going to be a costly project. It's a project that has to be done, but more important, it has to be done right, and that's what I'm looking for. So we're looking for your leadership in this case. I know a lot of it falls on the school committee, but we're the ones that make the decision as to how much money we'll spend on the project, and make the final decision on the location. Thank you.
Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the reasoning behind Council Belanger's motion to get a report from the city manager's office as to what impact or whether or not it makes sense to do a non-binding referendum. I think, as Council Samaras indicated, it's really one of getting the information out. I've gone to a couple of the meetings. I was the one at the high school last week, and I was stunned at the turnout. There was more elected and appointed officials there than there were interested parties. I know that you had an economic development meeting going on the same night, so that could have been part of the issue. But I think it's important to continue to provide the information. I think it's important to keep on the timeline that we're currently on, and hopefully we'll have a decision in the early spring. And clearly, based on that information, we'd be able to make a decision whether or not we wanted to try to put something on the council agenda. I know, Mr. Mayor, and I don't want to take any of your thunder away, I know that you're looking at maybe doing a debt exclusion like Somerville, I believe, did for their high school. That's something that should absolutely be looked at, the finance subcommittee as well as the administration, because this is something that I hope will, be able to take an affirmative vote on to move forward with the high school. But I think it really comes down to information. So if we could, as Councilor Samaras said, and the intent, I believe, of Councilor Belanger's motion, just get the information out to the general public so that they know, we know, what this will cost. So that's, those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Leary.
Just quickly, I guess through to you, Mayor, do you know when the educational plan will be voted on by the school committee? Will that be this year or early next year? Just kind of a...
It will be early next year.
Okay.
I think first of all, I don't think it's finished yet.
Okay.
So the school committee can't consider it right now since it's not done.
Oh.
Hopefully, it will be done in time so that the school committee can give it a proper amount of deliberation when it is done.
Sure.
But I think that originally it was supposed to be, the school committee was going to vote for it in December with the idea that that it was needed for January. But I think that's been pushed up now till March. So I would anticipate that probably the school committee will have that plan in January or early February.
No, good. I mean, it makes sense. We're pushing it back. Why would you rush it? That's important because everything derives right from that educational plan. Right now, for the public, you have 3 locations that they're choosing to potentially put a new building on or rehab a building if you're downtown. The architects can't draw anything up until they know what the educational plan is. That means how many classrooms, how many science labs, et cetera, how much square footage. At the end of the day, the cost derives around square footage, really. I don't have a problem with the motion. I think having conversations with you regarding what Somerville did, I think is an intelligent way of trying to manage this type of cost, especially if we have really good growth coming in. If the Hamilton Hamilton Canal District does take off, that's gonna help our capacity down the road. So that way is a good way of looking at it in terms of managing it. I think what we need to do is really, Mr. City Manager, is at some point, as we get near March, is really have a finance subcommittee meeting, looking at really what is the best way of managing the cost, and if we need to go to a referendum. I think if we did what Somerville did, I think that's really positive. I think it's cost-effective, makes sense to me anyway, but I think we need to educate people on that, and you would have to go to a vote of the public to do that. But again, nobody knows really what the costs are. I think what we did is we laid out some initial thoughts financially based on discussions, which I know gets people, somewhat anxious. And rightfully so, because it is going to cost a lot of money. It is going to raise the taxes. It's not going to not raise the taxes. But in order to really design what we're going to have, we need the educational plan. And we need a thoughtful, appropriate one. We don't need to rush it. Once that's in, the architects can look at it, and they will come up with options. And then what the administration, I'm sure, will do, will challenge those options and maybe have other options. So it's going to happen fast, but there's a lot of work to do. So I don't have a problem with it, but I do like what the mayor's suggestion about the debt exclusion. I think that makes a lot of sense financially. I think there's a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, it's going to come really in the first quarter or April of early second quarter of next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
I think it makes all the sense to get input from the people, but before we do that, we need to tell them what we're asking them to vote on, which is the cost. I mean, it's a very complex project, but it will have a significant financial impact on the future of the city, as well as any other services, whether it's police, fire, so many other capital needs we have. So I think it's a good motion. I think before we move forward, we need to tell the people who are going to pay the bills what the impact is going to be. But we need to get the preferred option, which is what the next step is. We need to know what the state, the school building authority, is going to recommend and what that cost is going to be before we move forward. So it makes sense to send it back to the manager and continue to get information. That educational component, Councilor Leary mentioned, is really going to drive what the options are. So, but it will have some financial implications for decades on the city, and I think that people should have a right to weigh in if that's the case. I think the timing is going to be a little bit of a concern. Because correct me if I'm wrong, you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, we will have to tell SBA and take a vote of the City Council once the preferred option is whether we want to pursue that or not. And that will be well before November. Is that correct?
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Manager?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Mr. McGovern?
Yes, and we can get additional time. November may be a little late. Let me just say one thing. This is the most flawed process I've seen in my entire career.
I agree, yeah.
It's run by the SBAB, and it's ridiculous. And, everybody has to step back and take some time for that educational plan to come in, and then we'll be able to design a building based upon that educational plan, and then present it to the city councilors and the cost incurred with different options as to what we can afford. So I think, I think we just need to step back and wait for that education plan, which, like the mayor succinctly said, will be probably at the beginning of the year, and then we'll have a better idea. But we'll be presenting this to the city council, so you will be making an informed decision as to what is the best thing to present to the citizens of Lowell.
Are you all set, Council?
Thank you, yes.
Is there any further discussion? Can you take the...
Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really wasn't going to speak on this, but I have to echo a little bit what the city manager said. I think when we started this project, or when we started talking about it, it was going to be a $250 million project, and I think everybody raised their eyebrows at $250 million. That was going to be a lot of money. And now, as the process goes on, we're starting to realize that it's going to be a lot more expensive. But nobody really knows how expensive. And so I think probably the best advice is wait. Just wait until the feasibility study is done, till the cost estimates are a little bit more solid, and then everybody can make a much more informed decision. You know, I've talked to several city councilors and several other people about what they did in Somerville. And Somerville, their high school is going to cost $250 million, and that's their estimate. And that $250 million is for a high school that will have less than 1,200 kids. And it will be like Lowell, well, maybe like Lowell, it'll be built on the exact same site as where the existing high school is. That's a lot of money, and what they did down there is they went with and put it on as a referendum, and they did that so they could do the debt exclusion. And the clever thing about that, I think, and one of the things that makes that be an attractive option, is the schedule of the payments. So what they did down in Somerville is for the first maybe 10 or 15 years, the payments are low. And then 15 years into it, the payments jump significantly. But that's 15 years down the road. So 15 years down the road, that significant jump probably won't seem all significant at that point in time. That might be a better option for us to go, rather than to put it onto the tax rate, which is going to be a substantial increase on the tax rate, substantial. And it's going to be, this is probably for just about everybody on the city council, this is going to be the toughest vote that anybody has made, at least, and certainly the toughest vote since I've been back on the city council. I can think of no other vote that will come close to this. It's going to be, you know, maybe when we're all said and done, maybe we're talking about $350 or $400 million. And if we're talking about that, it's really hard to commit to that when you look at the list of other projects that have to be done in the city, which is significant. And just one that I'll point to is there are 11 schools that were built 30 years ago in the city all at the same time, and for 30 years, the city has treated those schools like they're new schools. Well, they're not new schools. They're 30-year-old schools at this point, and they all need new roofs, and they all need new heating systems and updates to their major building systems. And the cost for that is going to be substantial too, and that's something that has to be done. And, you know, I think Councilor Elliott before has mentioned the police station. We've got the DPW, and we've got a facility, and we've got a lot of proposals and a lot of things that need to be done that cost a lot of money. And one of them is the high school. But I think that we're way better off if we just wait until a feasibility study is done, where we have a stronger idea of just what those costs are going to be, and we'll be able to make a much more informed decision than we can now. And a more informed decision, I think, than we'll be able to decide just where we're going to get the money to pay for this. And that's all important. And so, you know, for now and for the next couple of months, I think really we just have to wait. And I know that every time there's a meeting on this, such as the meeting that were on Lowell High last week, you know, the dialogue goes up and there's a lot more discussion about it. But I do think that all discussions right now, for the most part, are preliminary and would be a lot more valid if we just wait until that study is done. And so as far as the referendum, I think for us to do debt exclusion, we have to have a referendum in order to do that. So if we're going to go that way, we would have to have a referendum in order to do that. A non-binding referendum is, I think it's worthwhile to send the motion to the city managers and, you know, let him come back whether or not that's a recommendation. I'm not sure why it's a good idea to have it be non-binding or not non-binding, because even if it's a non-binding recommendation, once the vote is taken, I'm not sure if anybody's going to vote against what turned up for that, by that referendum. So the referendum, in some ways, would lock you in, or at least it would probably lock me in. I'd have a hard time voting against whatever the outcome of that referendum was, and I would expect that everybody else would. And let me remind everybody that I do think that once those numbers become, I know that the hearings that we've had and the meetings that, the public meetings that have been held regarding the high school project, that they haven't been well attended. But at the very end, when this city council does make a decision, there has to be a public hearing then. And I would imagine that that public hearing will be very well attended, and that by that time, everybody's going to be weighing in pretty strong one way or the other. And I do expect that there's going to be a lot of lobbying on both sides of the issue. There will be those people who think that the high school is the most important project in the city and that it absolutely has to be done. And there will be other people that think that we should do something that's going to be a lot less than that, because the city would not be able to afford it financially over the long term. Again, I think the watchword for now is wait. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any comment? Councilor Belanger?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And I want to thank all my colleagues. That was some outstanding debate right there, and some great points by all my colleagues. And I have the utmost respect and appreciation for all their words. And, that is exactly, the spirit of the motion, is to wait. We have a lot of information that's forthcoming, okay? This is when everything's in and we got a final plan, a final dollar amount, then we go to the taxpayer. That's the spirit of the motion, to say, do you approve this project at such and such a rate to your tax rate? That's all I'm trying to accomplish here. And I'm not trying to rush the process or circumvent by any means with this motion being made. So, it's just that it was getting scary with the cost of this. The game seems to be changing. It's escalating almost by the day, and low voter turn and low input sessions have really been concerning to me. So that's why I made the motion. We have plenty of time, but I think as this process goes, things are going to seriously slow down, because we got to get this right. We cannot rush so much any aspect of this project. Education plan, what type of school we want, it's going to take a lot of time. So if the timing of the process allows us to hear from the electorate and the taxpayers, I think it's a good idea. If we stand to lose all the funds, then this may not work. So we'll see as time goes on, as we hear from the manager and his infinite wisdom of the timing of the process. We'll go from there, but I just think it's a good idea ultimately to hear from the taxpayer. So thank you very much, Mr. Vice Mayor, and to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Looking forward to the manager's infinite wisdom in this situation. Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Mr. Manager, just as a point of reference to close this discussion up, you expect us by early next year to have a design for all three of the possible locations of the high school, and for us to vote on that?
We'll have a menu of options, like A, B, C, or D in the next month.
Yep. Right. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Councilor Belanger. Have the city manager update the city council on the Lowell House project on Merrimack Street. Second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Belanger.
Motion speaks for itself, Mr. Vice Mayor. Thank you.
All those opposed? All in favor? Motion passes. Next, for the city council executive session, agenda item 8.
Chairman, could we do the announcements first, because we'll probably be...
Yes, I apologize. On to announcements. Councilor Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Last week, under announcements, I made an appeal and an alert to the people that were watching about the radiothon that was going to be taking place on that particular Saturday on WCAP and throughout the area in the city. And I just want to take this opportunity, if I can ask for help, I'm certainly going to take today's time to thank all those that came out. People were so generous. The firefighters went out to 7 or 8 locations. They raised $13,000 with the boot brigade. People volunteered, people manned different locations with the Salvation Army kettle and the bell and all this. People called into the radio station. People donated all kind of beautiful gifts to be auctioned off. Tom Golden did a tremendous job being the auctioneer. It was just a wonderful day, and they set their goal for $150,000. I don't know the exact figure, but Warren Shaw, who did a tremendous job, will announce that on Saturday. I'm believing that it went over its expectations. So to everybody that volunteered and came out and gave, whether you gave 50 cents or 5,000, it was the thought and the kindness that you portrayed. And I just want to say thank you to everybody, and thank you.
Hey, Counselor. Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the last meeting of 2016, I do believe, and so as the mayor, on behalf of the city council and the administration, I'd just like to wish all of the viewers at home a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I just hope that everybody has a safe and healthy holiday season. And we'll see everybody in 2017, hopefully.
God
Thank you.
willing.
Thank you, Smith. Are there announcements? No? Last item of the evening is our city council executive session regarding matters of pending litigation, public discussion of which could have a detrimental effect on the city's position. We're going to do a roll call to enter the session, and then also we're going to state to adjourn after the executive session ends. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
To do a motion.
Did we need a
Oh,
motion?
Sorry, Councilor Mercia, a motion to.
Motion, so moved.
Second by Councilor Manazzo.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy. That's 9 yeas.